What's your opinion on the application and viability of new theories like modern monetary theory?
Okay, so let's think about this for a minute. Modern monetary theory, what it says is basically, and I'm going to simplify it, is that there's no trouble printing money. That money gets its value from the fact that you need it to pay taxes, and therefore the government can print as much as it wants to pay for whatever it wants. The bottom line being, we don't need to worry about deficits and debts. We just print more money. And kind of mainstream economists will come back and say, well, but you do that, you're going to create inflation. To which the monetarists will say, and again, I'm simplifying this, generally speaking, the MMT people will say, yeah, well, it's possible you may get some inflation, but if you do, you can simply raise taxes, which will siphon this excess money out of the economy to keep your prices stable. So the picture you should have in your mind is, on the one hand, the government's printing money and spending it for things it wants. And on the other hand, as we get too much money, it starts to create inflationary pressures. The government taxes to pull that money out of the system, and that stabilizes prices. So that's the general idea. Now, what the problem with this is, what nobody's saying, or at least the MMTers aren't saying, is that what you've done at the end is to substitute goods and services that people want for goods and services that politicians want. So what you're really doing is taking money out of the hands of people, putting it into the hands of politicians. And so at the end of the day, let's suppose you end up with the same GDP as you had before, gross domestic product. We had $20 trillion before, we have $20 trillion now, except that masks what constitutes that GDP. So what would have been the case is you had $20 trillion worth of GDP. And what was that GDP? Well, it was things that people want: cars and houses and clothes and computers and these sorts of things. And now you have $20 trillion worth of GDP, but what constitutes that GDP? It's more things like roads, bridges, tanks, border walls, all sorts of things that government wants. And so when you're done, although the numbers economically look about the same, we've got the same GDP after as before, people aren't as happy. And so it, you ask, is this kind of thing sustainable? I would say no, because what you're doing ultimately is making people progressively less and less happy by taking away their ability to decide for themselves what goods and services they'll have.